Oh, that was the best ever. Okay. Okay, here we go. We're goofy. Welcome back to another episode of Ask Eddie
Uh,
and Ann. We've gotten off to, we haven't done this in a little while, so we were a little rusty and we got off to a bit of a shaky start there. Uh, you know, so I said that obviously I'm freezing cold. I've been away from my home for a few days, and in my house, I just turned on the heater, so my house is ice cold, and so I have to do this looking like this. How are things where you are, Ann?
they're good. My radiator kicked on about 15 minutes ago, so it's actually warm in here. But during
Okay.
the day, it's really cold in here because the heat only comes on in the morning and the evening. For people who don't live in old apartment buildings, they have radiator heat and they're set to come on at a couple times a day. So
Now, I just want to say, Ann, that this is an extraordinary. Did you direct this, or did Stanley Kubrick direct your framing? Because uh, not only do you look like a composition out of The Shining or something with this framing, but you have your two cats are perfectly placed in the frame. It's extraordinary. You have a cat to the right, a cat to the left, a little further back. Every focal plane is working. There's the foreground, middle ground, background. It's great. Now all we need is some figure to come out of the darkness in the back hallway there, and that will make it all complete.
I
Which
would
we're hoping doesn't happen.
I was gonna say I would, even though if it did, it'd probably just my access keys to my apartment, so it'd probably just be him. That would be fine.
Let's hope. Okay.
Unless he's become homicidal.
Okay, so we're keeping our fingers crossed on this one. So, Anne, it seems like a year since we did one of these because a lot's been going on. I can't even keep track. So maybe we should just skip that and and move right into the questions,
That
since
sounds
that's what the folks are here for. They don't want to hear about my travails, or I hope everything's been going well with you since the last time we talked.
yeah, it has. Just busy as always, but nothing bad.
That's excellent. And so let's just roll. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll detour, as we usually do, into other subjects, because it has been a weird week
Yeah.
for me, and there are a few things that people have asked about in the past that I have like updates on, and we'll see if we can weave them in organically into the flow. So let's get it rolling. Are
Okay.
you going to kick off the first one?
I'm gonna do the first one.
Okay.
And this is from our friend Michael from Post Falls, Idaho.
We can
Thanks.
always count on Michael to come up with something good.
Yeah. Thanks for that article about Harry Popkin in the latest North City magazine. Having enjoyed Poplin's three North film productions, D.O.A, The Well, and The Thief, I was fascinated to learn this multifaceted in Trump. Oh God,
This
entrepreneur
multifaceted entrepreneur.
was once a boxing manager. Since Eddie's
Right.
father was Mr. Boxing for San Francisco's Examiner for 52 years, I wondered if his father knew Popkin and if Eddie had any interesting stories about him his father might have passed on to him.
I'm sorry to say no. But thank you, Michael. John Ranovich did a great job with that story in the magazine, which was really, really interesting. And the fact that not only was he a boxing manager, but the Popkins produced race films in the early 1940s in LA, and did some of the first movies with Lena Horne before, you know, in typical fashion, kind of the lower echelon guys in Hollywood were there first, and then Lena Horne went on to 20th Century Fox and all that stuff. But Harry and Leo Popkin were actually making pictures with her first, and but no, I didn't know anything about. My dad never mentioned Harry Popkin. He was Los Angeles based. My dad was up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and even though he knew a lot of the people who were promoting fights and things in L.A., he didn't. He wasn't as close to them as he was the people in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So that name never came up. However, I'll throw this out because it's very interesting. My dad did know and was colleagues with a couple of newspaper men who were associated with very famous noir films. Number one, he worked with a guy named Bob Patterson, who was a good friend of the family, and he was always hanging around the house, and I knew him quite well. And Bob Patterson wrote for the San Francisco Examiner under the name Freddie Francisco, and he was kind of a gadfly character who had actually served time in prison in the South for check kiting schemes and and forgery and stuff, which he turned into the treatment that became Brute Force, that became the movie Brute Force. So Bob Patterson is the guy who sold Mark Hellinger the story that he turned into Brute Force. And also another colleague of my dad's that was around the house quite a bit was a fellow named Ed Montgomery, who was a city-side reporter who is famous because Simon Oakland played him in I Want to Live, the Barbara Graham story. Simon Oakland plays Ed Montgomery in that film, and he was the guy who really crusaded on behalf of Barbara Graham, saying, you know, she's not really guilty of this crime, and she should not be executed. And you know what an incredibly, those are two incredibly powerful movies that were made from stuff that these guys wrote. I mean, Patterson's wasn't newspaper articles. It was just a treatment he wrote for Hellinger. But Ed Montgomery, they used the newspaper stories as the basis for the screenplay for the movie that mostly Don Mankiewicz wrote. So that's it. Not an answer at all to Michael's question, but I thought it was interesting because, of course, I didn't know any of this when these guys were around.
Yeah.
Right? Because I hadn't seen these movies. I didn't know anything about it. So, and by the time I did know, they were both dead. So I couldn't discuss it with them at all. So it's a missed opportunity.
So how do people get the magazine, Eddie?
People get the magazine by signing up for the Film Noir Foundation mailing list and then donating at least $20 to get a year's subscription to the magazine, which is now available both as a digital publication and as a print edition. But you do not get the print edition by donating to the Film Noir Foundation. You have to buy the print edition through Amazon. You know, it's $14.99. And I know a lot of people who are now doing both, which I think is fantastic because the print edition is really great. Yeah. And for those of you who want to hold it in your hand, you can do that. And I'm trying to think if I have any. Well, it's interesting. When is this installment airing? And
2 days after Noir City Christmas.
Okay, 2 days after Noir City Christmas. So why bother to plug Noir City Christmas? That's not going to help.
No.
But I think I'm crazy. One of the crazy things that I've been doing this week is I have to prep for a night I'm doing on TCM of true crime movies. This is not related to Noir Alley at all. I'm just doing a night of true crime with Paula Zahn. I don't know if you ever watch On the Case with Paula Zahn, but like since 2008 or 2009, she's done this cable show where she investigates all these true crime stories. And so Paula Zahn and I will be talking about I Want to Live, The Boston Strangler, and In Cold Blood. We'll be showing those it's a very depressing
I was
triple
going to
bill.
say that's
If anybody can make it through all three in one night, that's they deserve a Purple Heart or something. But it's really interesting because Paul is pretty great, and the number one thing I'm going to talk about with her is that there are no women involved in any of these movies. They're only, sadly, they're only the victims in these films.
yeah.
I mean, Barbara Graham was considered a perpetrator, but as I know Paula is going to talk about when we do this, she would not have been executed today because all the evidence against her was circumstantial, and she was also entrapped by the police. When she was trying to buy somebody's alibi, who turned out to be an undercover cop, which was completely would not stand up in a court of law today. Anyway, so at some point on TCM, that's coming up. I wish I knew the date, but I really don't, because I haven't actually recorded this stuff with Paula yet. But I'm doing that in a few days.
Yeah, and just so people know, we also have a TV listings page on filmnoirfoundation.org. And so we'll make sure to box that when it comes up.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Now this is from our next question comes from Rob in Coscob, Connecticut, who notes, thank you, Rob, that he has donated to the Film Noir Foundation and received the fantastic annual Noir City magazine. And he promises to donate every year.
Thank you.
We're going to hold you to that, Rob. Thanks. And we're going to hold you to it. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase what Rob says because it was a really interesting and somewhat long note. So I'm going to paraphrase. He talks about how much he loves the movies that are both, he enjoys the writing and he enjoys the movies that are surprising and written as tight as a drum. And immediately the ones that come to mind are The Breaking Point, Act of Violence, and Raw Deal, all of which are really well written. Yeah. And Raw Deal is kind of amazing because it's well written, even though the original story it's based on is pretty bad. So here's the deal. Rob is asking about Criss Cross, and I'm paraphrasing this because several people have asked the same question of me over the years. Like, I obviously Rob knows that I love Criss Cross, and I put it like in my top 5 noir films of all time. But he says, how can you do that? Because there's gaping plot holes. And specifically, it's about the end. He says, hasn't Steve gone to the hospital with the family thinking he's a hero because he saved half the money? Don't Slim and his gang have the other half? How is he able to bribe the guy that's supposed to deliver him to Slim? How does Anna, how does Anna have the money? All this stuff. So I am going to answer this question, I hope, once and for all. Unless, Anne, do you know how to explain all of this? Because it isn't that complicated. But I
don't know. I just always thought the guy just, I don't know. I always just thought she just took the money from Slim and that the guy was just going along because he could pay him off once he got the money.
Okay. so here's correct. I mean, here's the thing. The answer to this question is in the very first scene of the movie. It's how the movie opens, right? With the camera swooping in on Burt Lancaster and Yvonne DiCarlo in the parking lot, and they discuss their plan for how they're going to escape with the money. So when this goes off the rails, because during the actual robbery, Slim is going to use this as cover to kill his rival, Steve Thompson, played by Burt Lancaster. But Steve foils that and kills the other guys instead and ends up looking like a hero. So he does. And then they specifically show him kind of passing out in that scene. So correct, he preserves half of the money for the armored car company, and so he looks like a hero. But in fact, Slim has gotten the rest of the money, but Slim, suspicious as he is of Anna, he takes the money and she steals the money from Slim. But Slim doesn't know that Anna and Steve have made plans to meet up at the beach house in Palos Verdes. And so Steve, when he comes to, realizes, I just got to get out of here. What he doesn't realize is that the guy sitting outside his hospital room has been sent by Slim because Anna has obviously stolen the money at this point from Slim. And so he sends the guy to the hospital room because he knows that sucker Steve is going to go to Anna. And the only thing that Slim doesn't know is where that is,
right,
where they are going. So this takes Steve to Anna. And that's when that one of the great scenes in Noir plays out, where she says, "You idiot, don't you know? Slim sent him. He's going to follow us here." And it all. So contrary to Rob thinking that this is a bad ending, I think it's like one of the most perfect endings in Noir, because the guy's lovelorn stupidity dooms them all. And she says, "Why couldn't you just leave me alone?" Because she's just trying to get away with it, because she's cheating Slim out of the money and trying to get away on her own.
Yeah.
And she's just so bummed. Bad word, but when Steve shows up, because it's like, idiot. I mean, obviously Slim knows what you're going to do, and I would have gotten away with all of this if it wasn't for you being so stupid. Perfect Noir ending. So that's the answer to that one, Rob.
Okay. And Rob had some other questions, and just to let Rob know and other people know, we do like one question. If there's email has more than one question, we only do one question from the email, and then I go back and we answer the other questions. But I would really love it if people would email their questions separately, so that I don't have to track and go back and make sure that I get
I mean, it's fabulous that people are enthusiastic enough to ask a bunch of questions, but we do try to spread it around so that one person isn't getting 5 questions in a show. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. You got cats?
Yeah.
Kathleen is actually delivering me a cocktail right now.
Oh man.
So this will help warm me up. Thank you, dear.
Coaster?
And a coaster with it. I am living right, I'll tell you. She says I need to get a dumb waiter. That would be me. I am the dumb waiter. But how great is that when your wife brings you a frosty martini when you're in the middle of your show? I think that's just excellent. Thank you.
Large.
And I have to tell you, we're probably going to go short tonight because something smells really, really good downstairs. So
she's making you dinner too.
Cheers. It's much warmer downstairs, but I can't do this downstairs. It's too noisy. So, okay.
And this one's from Jay.
My friend, good martini.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to interrupt. It's a good martini.
I remember those. I used to make a great martini. My friend Laura, a faithful watcher of Eddie's Sunday morning noirs, and I recently watched Somewhere in the Night on disc, and were distracted by so many of the implausible plot points, especially by the mysterious pawn ticket. Where did John Hodiak find the ticket? We hope Eddie's commentary on the disc would answer this mystery, but no.
Okay, well, after having a perfect answer to the last question, I have no idea where the pawn ticket came from for this question. But yes, this is one of the reasons. It's funny. Well done, Anne, putting these questions back to back.
You're welcome.
Because it does. See, I don't think that Criss Cross is a improbable or badly written screenplay. Although I would, at some point, I would love to read the actual screenplay to see if there was more expository stuff in the screenplay that Siadmak just opted to cut out, for pacing. Because I'm sorry, I'm going back to the last question now. But because that scene in the hospital, right, where Burt Lancaster is all trussed up and he's got the cast and everything, that scene is so fantastic. It's really one of the best scenes that Robert Siodmak ever directed. And it's so slow that it's daring for a third act to have a scene that slow at the climax of the picture. I wonder if, in order to keep that in, he had to cut out some expository stuff that made it pretty obvious what was going on at the end of the movie, which is why so many people asked, like, how did that actually happen? But Somewhere in the Night is just, you can't follow it. You can't. I mean, it's just too confounding. And I think that's kind of the point. I see her creeping around there. She's going to plop right on the keyboard in a second. I know.
She went behind the monitor.
So which is which tonight?
That was Emily that just went around. She just went around the monitor and she's getting in the window. So
okay,
she can look out into the night.
Somewhere in the night. She's looking out there somewhere in the night. So, I mean, if you're going to have a screenplay that doesn't really hold together and has a lot of implausibility, you better make sure that every other aspect of the show is spot on, right? Great cinematography, really compelling characters, really good performances, great cinematography, brisk editing, all of this stuff to cover for the fact that the plot doesn't quite hold together. So it's interesting to me that, you know, you can kvetch about Somewhere in the Night, but those are the very things that people love about The Big Sleep, is that I can't follow it. I can't, you know. So, I mean, let's face it, John Hodiak is no Humphrey Bogart and Nancy Guilde is no Lauren Bacall.
True.
So that's to my point. It's like all of a sudden you start noticing the flaws instead of just going along for the ride. So I offer no excuses for Somewhere in the Night. Sorry. Hey, Ben Mankiewicz, your uncle really wrote kind of a lame screenplay for that movie, to be quite honest about it.
Yeah. Somewhere in the Night, is that the one that has that really great scene when he goes, like, he's following leads and he talks to that older woman?
Yes.
In the house. God, I love that scene. Like,
that's
I can't remember the name of the actress.
Josephine Hutchinson, I think, is the actress's name. Yeah, it's fabulous. And, you know, that's the old thing that Raymond Chandler always said, you know, a good plot is just really, really good scenes strung together.
Yeah.
You know, they don't necessarily have to make a tremendous amount of sense. And especially if the lead character is suffering from amnesia.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I would argue, I mean, that's a perfectly fine watchable film, but it's not a 4-star movie by any stretch of the imagination. But no, I don't know where the pawn ticket, how he found the pawn ticket or any of that stuff, nor does it actually really matter to me.
No.
So I'll drink to that.
Hey, so it's your turn.
Okay. Kathleen, and I'm assuming this is not my wife who wrote this.
It's a different Kathleen.
A different Kathleen. Recently saw the film Emily the Criminal, a terrific neo-noir featuring a knockout performance by Aubrey Plaza. Follows a classic noir plot about an ordinary person who inexorably gets drawn into criminal activity. And Kathleen thought this was one of the best American films she's seen in a long time. And her question for us is, guess what? Have you seen it? And what did you think? And so I will say I have not seen it. In fact, I was planning on watching it tonight. So maybe we should. Have you seen it, Anne?
I have not, but it sounded good though when I read about it. So I put it on my just watch list, which is where I track all the things I want to watch.
Well, it came out in late summer, and it was actually showing at the Music Box Theater when I was there doing the Noir City Festival. And I had several people tell me it was really great and that I should watch it. And I was hoping to be able to sneak out of Noir City and into the adjacent theater so I could watch this film. But that didn't happen. So I haven't seen it yet. So we're officially going to table this question. And let's remember to come back to it for Kathleen's sake and Aubrey Plaza's sake, and discuss it after we have both seen it. I do like her as an actress. I'm watching her right now in the show White Lotus. I don't know if you watched that, Anne.
I don't, but both Ted and my brother Nick really like it.
Yeah, and I don't think she's asked to do very much in White Lotus. It's not the show is interesting, and I enjoy watching it. It's one of the most squirm-inducing and kind of hateful shows on television, I think, because it just makes you hate people. You just hate people when you watch this show. You hate affluent people, basically.
Yeah.
And you know, her characters so far on this show, what I've seen, is kind of one-dimensional, but she's very compelling. She's wonderful actress to watch. So I really look forward to seeing Emily the Criminal.
Yeah, and I'm just going to put a quick plug in for something because I've been watching the Japanese TV series Midnight Diner on Netflix, and it is amazing.
I love that show.
So hooked on it.
I love that show.
It's amazing.
That is my drug. That is my drug of choice. Because if it's like 11 o'clock at night and I'm not quite ready to go to bed, I will just watch Midnight Diner. And do you not love him?
Oh,
Master?
Yeah.
Master is the greatest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He is like the samurai chef, and he has that inexplicable scar down his face that they never explain.
No, the closest you get to is the other character. He's pretty. Is that like weird poet guy that comes and like stuff? And like when he goes off on a trip, he says to him, "I'm sorry about the scar." Which sounds like it's his fault. But then, you never find out what it is.
It's. I love that show.
Oh my gosh,
that is one of my. And I'm so usually when I watch these TV things, it's like, how many seasons is this? Because if it's like 3 seasons, I go, oh, I don't want to dedicate that much time to it. But with Midnight Diner, it was just like, oh my God, there's so many seasons. I'm so happy. It's so great. I just love the whole concept of the show, and explain to people what it is if they have no idea what we're talking about.
So this man owns a diner that's only open from midnight to 7 in the morning, and he only has one thing on the menu. But if you ask him to make something and he has the ingredients, he'll make it. So, and then so there's like the regulars that you see all the time. And then you also have sort of guests coming in and changing and stuff. And each show is centered around a dish, so that the person's ordering who's going to be sort of the protagonist of that particular episode. And then at the end of each episode, they actually give like a tutorial on how to make the dish, the proper way to make the dish, which I really like. The first episode when they did that, I almost passed out. I'm like, this is so great.
Yes, it's fantastic. It's the best breaking of the wall I've ever seen, because the characters turn right to the camera and talk about the food, and then they say good night, thank you.
It's great.
It's so fantastic.
And it's great because each story, like there's stories about the Yakuza, there's sort of tragic love stories. There's like a really good one with a mother and son that is one of my particular favorites. And there's another one where one of the main characters is a stripper, and she meets this older woman, and they just sort of have
that's one of my favorite episodes as well.
I thought was amazing. So yeah, and it's just a great show. And I can't. And the only thing that's kind
of noir about it because
Yeah.
because you never know. The other thing I love about it is you never know whether the episode is going to be funny or dramatic or just really heartbreaking or
Yeah.
point. You just don't know where it's going to go. And they're 30 minutes, and it's so because it's this set from midnight, to dawn. It has a very noirish thing because only those denizens of the night are coming to this diner, right? Whether they're just lonely people or um, the guy who runs the drag bar,
Yeah.
the older queen
Yeah.
who runs the bar across the street. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the guy who is just the ritual patron of the strip club, the guy with the baseball cap, he is fantastic. He doesn't even seem like an actor. He seems like that's the real guy. It's so good. I do love that show, and it's such it reminds me of old television because it's so tightly structured and so well written that they pack so much into like 28 minutes. It's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, because the stories are really complete. They feel complete and just like you said. I mean, just the writing on that show is really good.
Yeah.
And it's like what was it? There's a million stories in the naked city.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's just what it's like. Only there's food. Only there's really good food. Because you got to be careful when you watch that show because it makes you very, very hungry when you see, because they do kind of fetishize the food when they put it down and you see everybody eat, and they take the time to show him cooking it and everybody eat. They do all of that and they still have time to tell a great story. It's fantastic. Okay. Wow, that was an interesting detour. I didn't know that you were going to go there. And yeah, we went from Aubrey Plaza to Midnight Diner. And I'm embarrassed to say I don't even know that actor's name.
He's not someone I was familiar with.
No, but he reminds me of all the classic Japanese actors that we love. Ryo Ikebe and
Takakura.
I mean, he's not he's not really Toshiro Mifune, but I mean, he looks just like one of the seven samurai in the kitchen, and he's fantastic. Okay, your turn. If you can manage it, it's your turn.
And this is from Tommy, who's from London West 1. I used to live in London Northwest 6, by the way. Would you consider The Passenger, 1975, director Michelangelo Antonioni, starring Jack Nicholson and Maria Schneider, a proper noir? I'd say that I do, or at least a neo-noir, in spite of the Technicolor format. Thanks, and thanks for the Ask Eddie and Ann program. It's a must-see for me.
Very nice. Thank you, Tommy. That's lovely. You've seen The Passenger, right?
I have not seen The Passenger.
Oh, okay. Well, you have that to look forward to. What I appreciate about the way Tommy phrased this was, would you consider it a quote unquote proper noir? I don't know if I'm coining a new phrase now when I say this, but that I would call art house noir.
Yeah.
That is what that is, because there is no question that in terms of the theme of that movie and the plot of that movie, it is noir. I mean, it's a man, a desperate man trading identities and then not being able to escape, even though he has tried to assume another, to step into another life. He can't escape who he is and what he's done. So, but it's an Antonioni film, right? So it has none of the tropes of film noir or anything, but it is a noir story, much like, dare I say, Antonioni's feature film debut, Story of a Love Affair, which I have shown at Noir City, and which is completely a film noir, but done in his style. And I find this to be one of the most um, fascinating and interesting things about noir is when um, a director takes it and plays it in their own unique style. It's like David Lynch doing, Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
Like these are subconscious variations on noir, and Antonioni does the same thing. I mean, they're mysteries, they're and in some cases they're out and out crime stories, but the way he chooses to, like, Blow Up is a perfect example. I mean, it's a crime story, but the way he presents it is so unique and so individual that it doesn't adhere to it doesn't fit in the category, but it's clearly inspired by. And that's exactly how I feel about The Passenger, which has one of the great final shots in movie history that nobody really talks about anymore. But it's pretty unique. And it's also interesting that Jack Nicholson is in it.
Yeah.
Like, how big a star was Jack Nicholson back then? Like, Michelangelo Antonioni and, Stanley Kubrick and all these filmmakers were like, I got to make a film with Jack Nicholson,
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating when you think about it, like how many great filmmakers that guy has worked with.
Yeah.
And, then later on, he kind of became just Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Where it was funny when Sean Penn appeared at the Noir City Film Festival, and we showed The Pledge, which is a great movie.
Yeah.
And he talked about how he didn't want Jack Nicholson to be Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, how did you direct him? And I said, I'm not going to allow you to do any Jack Nicholson stuff in this role.
Yeah.
And that was how he played the scenes. And he said, nope, that was too much Jack.
Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating.
It's weird because Ted and I were literally just talking about this on Saturday about what a great actor he was, like, when he was younger. Then it felt like he just almost became like just this shtick, you know what I mean? Where it's so mannered that you just don't see the character. All you see is Jack Nicholson playing the character.
I agree, and I don't really mean that as a criticism, because I get how that happens.
Yeah.
Like, they pay you so much money to do that thing you do.
Yeah.
And it's like the one that lost me was As Good as It Gets. That movie was like, I think I walked out. My memory is I walked out.
Yeah.
Specifically because I remember Greg Kinnear gave a really good performance in that movie.
Greg Kinnear was great in that.
He was great in that film. But Jack Nicholson was like, I can't take it. This is a guy doing like an imitation of himself for the length of a feature film. And it was just like, there's no character here. This is a guy just doing shtick, just like you said.
Yeah.
Which should not in any way detract from all the great performances that he has given in his career, which,
I think he's fantastic in Easy Rider. That is such a great performance. And
incredible.
He's also great as a sadistic dentist in
A Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors. I mean, or not the masochistic patient.
Yes.
Dentist.
But King of Marvin Gardens, all the stuff he did with Bob Rafelson.
Yeah.
He was too old, frankly, to be in Postman Always Rings Twice. But it's not a bad performance or anything. But anyway, okay. Enough about Jack.
Enough about Jack.
The Passenger, I recommend. I highly recommend to everybody. It's art house noir. That's what I'm calling it. Okay. So Vince from Chicago says, like you, I've always been disappointed that we never got more Easy Rollins movies, referring to the Devil in a Blue Dress, the Walter Mosley Carl Franklin's version of the Walter Mosley novel. He wonders, are there any other fictional detectives you wish you could see more of? And he says, for me, I've always thought that Harry Mosby would have made a great ongoing series. I know you love night moves. Any thoughts? Interesting question. I cannot for the life of me see a series of Harry Mosby movies because it felt to me like that was the statement about that particular male archetype of a private eye. I think I think that they said what they had to say about it, and the fact that he's left adrift at the end of the movie as Night Moves ends is the end of that. I mean, not that I wouldn't have liked seeing Gene Hackman play other detective characters in movies, but I think that was what they had to say about it. Much like Robert Altman in The Long Goodbye, I don't think there's anything more. There's nothing else beyond what he has to say about that character in The Long Goodbye. Yeah. But I'm trying to think about this. Is there any are there any detectives that we'd like to see a series built around? I mean, quite honestly, when I said that about it's a shame they never made more Easy Rollins movies, it's just because Denzel Washington is so freaking good.
Yeah.
In that role, and he's so charismatic, and it's just like, oh man, it would have been great to see like 6 or 7 more of these. You know?
Absolutely.
And Mosley's books are so good, like they're easily adaptable to film. It's kind of a shame that didn't happen. But I'm not sure I can think of any other series character that I don't know. Do you, Anne, do you read like continuing detective characters in fiction?
Yeah,
you know?
I have. I mean, honestly, probably the book series I've enjoyed the most was Dexter. Those books are amazing. The TV series, like the first couple of seasons were pretty good, and they kind of went divergent from the stories, I think, I finally just gave up after a while. And but I'm not, so I guess I would like to see in some ways, a more faithful adaptation of those would be really interesting. But I'm not sure if that can really be done. It's difficult because it's in not just first person, but also like in the present tense. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of hard to tell, like, I won't get too much into that because I don't want to give things away about the series. But I mean, those are probably the most recent book series I've read were the ones that I've just enjoyed much. I would love it if they would do an 87th Precinct or 87 Precinct.
Yeah.
Series, because those books are fantastic and they have compelling characters, not just Steve, the main character, but the other people that he works with. And there's even a Japanese version of one of his stories, King's Ransom, which is just amazing to me that film was made in Japan. I mean, with how good those books are, it's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great one. Yeah, it's kind of weird that there hasn't been an American TV series based on that.
Yeah,
that I know of. I mean, maybe there was. I'm not sure. But I don't know. I have no smart answer. For Vince, because if I love a character in novels, I fear for their adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. And the reason I was so perplexed about the Easy Rollins thing was that it was perfection. Mm-hmm. It was like Denzel Washington was the perfect, because when they do Philip Marlowe and stuff, it's like everybody debates, like, Oh my God. And now, you hear that Clive Owen is going to play Marlowe and Liam Neeson is going to play Marlowe. And it's like, none of these make sense to me. But Denzel Washington as Easy Rollins is like, this is so perfect. It's like, why don't people see this? And why do we not have this series?
Yeah.
And, you know, who knows? They may do it yet, and with all the stuff that's happening with streaming and everything, and how much more prevalent African American stories are.
Yeah.
It's like, why not go back to that? I don't know that it would be Denzel Washington to do it, but there's no shortage of great African actors who could play that character. They might not be as magical as Denzel Washington doing it, but why not? Why not do it? Let's hope somebody sees this and says, "What's he talking about?" Let's do that. Yeah. So we'll see. And if that happens, I expect Walter Mosley to give me 1/4% of his royalties for that. Okay.
This is from Liz in Hisdale, New York. I just saw a Western called The Halliday Brand, starring Joseph Cotten and directed by Joseph H. Lewis. It has a lot of noir overtones. I'm wondering if either of you have seen it. And if you have, please tell me what you think of it. And if you admire any other Western noirs.
Thank you, Liz, for that tale on your question that bailed me out, because I have not seen The Halliday Brand. Anne, have you seen it?
I have not seen it. Okay.
So once again, we are stumped by a loyal viewer, because I have not seen it. There's a number of Joseph H. Lewis movies that I haven't seen. I'm going to confess to that. Most of his stuff in the 50s I have seen, but not that one. So it's on my radar now, thanks to you, Liz. But Anne, what are some of your Western noirs that you like?
No Name on the Bullet with Eddie Murphy, which
Of
I've
course,
mentioned many times before.
as you have mentioned many times.
Is my favorites. Oh God, I can't believe I'm blanking on the Barbara Stanwyck movie, and it's about her and her father. And he remarries and brings the woman to the ranch. I know you know what I'm talking about. Oh my God, what's the name of it? And Gilbert Rollins in it.
Do I know what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good movie. Walter Houston's her father, and he's
the Furies.
The Furies, Jesus.
The Furies, yes. Sorry.
That movie.
Sorry, I spaced out as well. But yes, the Furies.
The Furies. And I don't know why.
For some reason, I got 40 Guns stuck in my head when you said
I was going to say 40
Western,
Guns as well.
But yes, the Furies is great.
Yeah, and that to me is I think 40 Guns as well. Like you could consider that a noir.
I don't. It's a Sam Fuller picture, which are kind of. It's like a Hitchcock thing. It's like they're a category unto themselves. But I love all the first ones. Pursued, Blood on the Moon, which our colleague Alan Rohde has just done a monograph on for somebody. I can't remember who the publisher is, but there is a book coming out just on that film that Alan did. And Ramrod, Rawhide from 20th Century Fox is like the Petrified Forest in the Old West. It's Tyrone Power and Susan Hayward. It's really good. But Ramrod is great, and by Andre de Toth. And he also did a picture called Day of the Outlaw that is now showing on the Criterion Channel that is fantastic. The Secret of Convict Lake is another Western noir that is terrific.
Yeah, and I completely forgot that I would also consider the Bud Bedecker, Randolph Scott films very much Western noir, and they're all good.
Yeah, and all, and for that matter, the Anthony Mann uh
Yeah.
westerns of the 1950s. It's a bit of a reach, but the protagonists in those films are very noirish characters. They're loners on a quest, looking for revenge. They have some score to settle, and all this stuff, and that makes those films feel. And there's also something about the minimalist aspect of those westerns that feels very much in keeping with the minimalist quality of so much noir, as opposed to like a big broad western like Red River or The Searchers or Wagon Master or something like that, that feels like the breadth of the old west. But those Mann and Bedecker westerns are like really tight and isolated and scary. It's like a single person isolated in a very, very scary, forbidding land, which makes them, to me, even more compelling than the traditional western. Anyway, Stations West, with Dick Powell and Jane Greer, is another, like 19. There were a lot of these made in 1948. There were a lot of 1948 western noir films. I think, uh, you know, uh, I'm not sure of the dates of all these, but Pursued, Blood on the Moon, Ramrod, Rawhide, Stations West, those were all made virtually the same year. And it really showed the pervasiveness of the noir influence in storytelling and visual style in right at that specific time. Okay.
Okay.
David writes in and says, I just watched The Maltese Falcon, the original, which stuck closely to the book, except I don't remember the bathtub scene in the book. It was shot pre-code. Bogart's version seemed to take a different approach. Spade seemed to be well off, nice clothes, apartment, etc., compared to Bogart's portrayal. So David is kind of asking, essentially, what did we think of the original Maltese Falcon? That's the 1931 version with Ricardo Cortez and B.B. Daniels, and which I have shown once upon a time at Noir City. And do you have any thoughts on the original version? Or
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I really liked about the original version is that Effie felt much closer to Effie in the book than the other versions that they've done with that story, which is one of the things actually I really like about that version. It's just that was like I like how Effie is portrayed in that film.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Ricardo Cortez is, I mean, he's hot, so it's not a hardship to watch him in a
movie. Okay, well done. It took it. I appreciate the film, and it is surprisingly faithful to the book, except in it's very once you've seen the Bogart version, it's really, really difficult to accept Ricardo Cortez and the way he plays the part, which is not my version of the character of Sam Spade from the novel at all. So I'm not entirely sure what they were thinking when they went that way.
Yeah.
With the silk robes and the pajamas and the suavity of the whole thing. I mean, it just didn't seem like what Hammett was really about, because Hammett was sort of a no bullshit. That was the whole point, right? Yeah. It's like there's no affectation, there's no bullshit, there's nothing. I mean, it's just like face the facts.
Yeah.
This is what's going on, and I didn't get any of that from Ricardo Cortez.
Yeah.
The characters of Casper Gutman and Joel Cairo in the original, the 31 version, are spot on from the novel. I mean, they are like, that's the same characters, you know, and it's kind of remarkable when you watch it to say, wow, you know, did Sidney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre watch this, because it's virtually the same performances. But I don't really love the 31 version, you know. It's really, really interesting if you're a Hammett aficionado, or if you've seen the 41 and just want to see what Hollywood in 1931 felt obligated to do to make this acceptable. But it also is very interesting because that difference between 31 and 41 is what film noir is kind of all about. And that's why I say, even though people say, oh, you know, the Maltese Falcon doesn't really look like film noir, it doesn't have the visual style or any of that stuff. And it's like, yeah, but when you see the way they played that story in 1931 versus how they played it in 1941, it tells you everything you need to know about the difference that was about to take over. You know, in John Huston's version of that story set the template for the noir attitude that was about to take over Hollywood. And it had everything to do with the way Bogart played Sam Spade.
I mean, he is like, that is the film noir character. Totally. I mean, it's an amazing performance. And I think probably people have heard me say, that's actually my favorite film of all time. Which I think I've talked about before, because it's just, well, it's a great adaptation of the book, but it's just, to me, I mean, Bogart's Sam Spade is such an amazing character. Like, every time you watch that, there's something else that you can see in that portrayal that he did. I mean, it was just the perfect actor for that role. Like, I don't think anyone will ever be able to do that story and hold a match to him. Just like people have talked about the, you know, remaking The Thin Man, and it's like, if you think anyone besides William Powell and Myrna Loy can play those characters, and Asta, of course, you know, no way.
But you're absolutely right, and you know, they tried to do that. They tried to do The Thin Man as a remake, and it would just be smirky and arch. You know, whereas William Powell is that character. You know, and Myrna Loy is Nora, and he is Nick, and they're originals. You know, they embody that completely. And anybody else who played that today, I'm sorry, I can't think of a single. The actor that I thought could kind of do it was Robert Downey Jr. I thought if anybody was going to attempt it, he could. I'd watch him try. But I know he's not going to be William Powell, right? But it'd be fun to watch him try.
And I think the problem too with trying to do The Thin Man again is just simply that was kind of their chemistry is lightning in a bottle. Totally. Like, I don't know that would be the main thing is how could you get that chemistry again, because it was extraordinary. And that's how they got cast, was just because Woody Van Dyke did another film with them and saw how they interacted when they were just waiting to do their scenes, like just off, you know, on the set. And he had to like really push to get them cast together for those roles. And he was right, you know. They were perfect.
I love that. I love that story. It was Manhattan Melodrama.
Melodrama.
And like they played a scene together, and they were just kind of between takes. He was watching them, and it was like, these two have got to be in a full feature together, you know. And you said it. It was lightning in a bottle. It was like perfect. Anyway, uh, you know, the Maltese Falcon thing. I I always will say there is no way um, overstate Humphrey Bogart playing Sam Spade is where film noir started.
Yeah.
Because it's because in order for a movement to happen, there has to be the ignition. Something has to ignite. And it's that portrayal that ignited it because he created a new American archetype.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the guy who lives by his own code. He is not representing law and order. That's not what the private detective does. He has his own code. He has his own situational ethics that apply.
Mm-hmm.
He is not above sleeping with his partner's wife.
Yeah.
And yet he sends her over, even though he'll sleep with Bridget. It's like, but no, you killed my partner, whose wife I slept with,
I know.
or
You've seen The Cheap Detective, right?
Yeah, it's and it's like this is the gray area that noir is all about.
Yeah.
And Bogart just filled that up like nobody else. And so the 31 version is okay, but the 41 version is the birth of film noir.
And there is a third version.
There is?
Yeah. The one with Betty Davis?
Oh, yes, of course. That's funny. I was thinking chronologically. It's like, what's after that? Yeah, Satan Met a Lady.
Satan Met a Lady.
Exactly. Which is weird because they make Betty Davis the protagonist. It's really about her.
Yeah.
It's not so much about the Spade character. But
yeah. But I did enjoy, the one thing I do like about that one is that they gender flipped Gutman and it's played by Alison Skipworth. And that, I loved that.
Yeah. So, it's not a bad film at all. It's not a bad film.
It's fun. I mean, it's not really, it's not really an adaptation. I mean, it is, but it's pretty loose. It's
it's funny. I tried comedy. When you remember, Anne, when I did that whole Hammett marathon at Noir City, I tried like hell to get that film because I wanted to show it as part of that series, and we couldn't get it, you know. And that's too bad because that's a film that it actually stands pretty well on its own. And it's so different that I don't even really consider it. That's why I just did that.
Huh? I know you were like,
there was a third version. What are you talking about? Okay, moving on. Who I can't remember who started.
This is Dennis. Any love for 1947's Dead Reckoning, a Bogart noir that doesn't seem to come up too often in conversation. I love it because it's bogey, but at the same time, there seems to be something off about it. I can't put my finger on. Looks great though. Has many of the classic noir tropes and bogeys as cool as ever.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Dead Reckoning, Ann?
I really like it. It's an interesting film, and there was actually, I can't remember which book it's in, but there's a really good essay on it just in terms of gender, because it's a very, in terms of gender things, is very interesting in the character that Elizabeth Scott plays and how she interacts with Bogart's character, especially at the end where he's speaking to her almost like she was someone he was in the war with, like a fellow soldier, which is
yes. Well, the whole paratrooper thing at the end of the film, the reason that movie doesn't work is because it's written by committee. There's like 5 screenwriters on that film, and they were trying so hard to figure out what worked, because that film to me represents the height of the film noir era, but that's not a positive thing, because the producers were thinking, what is it about these movies that people are responding to? And it wasn't really organic. They were like, well, they like Humphrey Bogart, and and plus obviously Columbia was trying to horn in on the Bogart Bacall magic, but they couldn't get Bacall.
Yeah.
So they got Liz Scott instead. And it's fascinating to think about if that movie had been made at Warner Brothers and Bacall had done it, it would have been the only movie in which she was opposite him where she was actually the femme fatale.
Yeah.
Because Bacall was never the femme fatale ever with Bogart. So she was always the good girl, the upstanding woman who rescues him.
Yeah.
And in Dead Reckoning, that's not the character. And they wanted Bacall to do that. And it didn't work out because, she wanted to be her own star as well, and there's just something, the flaw in that movie is the screenplay.
Yeah.
It's just too many elements not integrated well. That and individually there are great scenes in the film. Bogart's cool. It's great. The whole, it's the ultimate returning veteran from the war. Why did my buddy, my jump mate from the war, run when he was going to get the Congressional Medal of Honor or whatever? Yeah. I mean, it's all really a great premise that doesn't quite pay off. And it's a great film for film scholars to write about because all the elements are there.
Yeah.
But it's not, you can talk about the war and you can talk about the revenge thing and the femme fatale character. All that stuff is there. It just doesn't hold together particularly well.
Yeah.
And whether, I don't know who, I'm going to say, it's 5 writers. John Cromwell did the best he could with it. And just because I found this so interesting, that scene when you talked about the gender stuff in the movie, the scene where Bogart and Liz Scott are in the car and he talks about, I'd like to take the woman and put her in my pocket, shrink her down and put her in my pocket. And that was actually Bogart.
Yeah.
Bogart wrote that.
Yeah. Wow.
That was a thing that he had said quite often.
Yeah.
And they worked it into the script.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty intriguing, Yeah. Anyway, so there. That's my take on Dead Reckoning. Okay, Douglas from Santa Ana, California, which I will tell you is where my wife was born, in Santa Ana, California. He says Bruce Bennett is one of my favorites of the noir era. He quit acting, but lived to be 100. He deserved leading man status, in my view. What do you and Eddie think? So this question was aimed to you, Anne, because it says, what do you and Eddie think? And I don't know if you're aware of this, Anne, but Bruce Bennett was an Olympic athlete. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And what do you think of Bruce Bennett as an actor?
I think he's a good actor. I don't think he's a great actor, but he is because he's in Dark Passage, right? He's the one that's dating Agnes Moorehead. Yes. So he's in one of my all-time favorite scenes in any movie, Because I'm Strange. But the scene where they're over in like Bacall's apartment and he and Agnes Moorehead just start getting into this argument in front of her, and it's just like every time I watch it, I'm just looking at Bacall saying, tell them to get the fuck out of your apartment and argue somewhere else. I don't know why that scene just cracks me up, because it says so much about those two characters that they would just get into this drag out argument in somebody else's place. It's like, oh my God, this is a toxic relationship. And I love that scene. It just cracks me up every time.
I used to hate Bruce Bennett. Honestly, I just thought, like, what a dud this guy is. I apologize, Douglas, in Santa Ana, California, but then he started growing on me, because then you watch the movies a fourth and a fifth time, and it's just like, this guy, because it when you're younger, you want to see the vivid actors.
Mm-hmm.
You want John Garfield and Bogart and Robert Mitchum and Robert Ryan and Widmark and all these guys. But then when you start watching the movies a lot, suddenly you're watching Bruce Bennett, and it's like, this guy he's just delivering these lines. He's so functional in these movies, and you realize once you start investigating it, like, this guy's an athlete
Yeah.
who became an actor, and he's more than serviceable in these roles. I mean, I think of Mildred Pierce, and he's like
Oh,
perfect
he's
in
great in
Mildred
that.
Pierce. He's
Yeah,
fantastic
he's
in Mildred
perfect in that.
Pierce.
Because he can really play people that are, even though he's good looking and stuff, he's one of those people where he feels real in the role. Like, I just saw the movie The Menu in the theater a couple weeks ago. Great film. But so many performances in that are very sort of like they're playing these sort of kind of larger than life characters in some ways. And Judith Light is so fantastic in that film because she seems to be that person. Like, I felt like I could be at a good restaurant and I'd look over at another table, and that's exactly who I see. It's such an authentic performance. And the thing that drives me nuts is I know no one will say anything about it.
Yeah.
Because it's not flashy. And also, I cannot remember the name of the actor who played her husband, but it was the same way. They felt so real in a film that was very kind of absurdist in some ways.
I know exactly what you mean, and there's something to be said for those characters and the actors who portray those characters. Like, when I think of Bruce Bennett in The Man I Love, that he's like the guy that Ida Lupino is pining for, and he's very effective. He's good in Shakedown, where he's the editor of the newspaper, where Howard Duff is the flashy, cynical, rotten noir character, and Bruce Bennett is, the stand-up straight arrow editor guy. Like, that guy is gonna come into, he's gonna spoiling for a fall,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, the fact that he lived to be 100, Douglas, I'm not sure if that has any bearing on anything, because he was an athlete, and obviously I don't think he smoked or drank.
Yeah.
So good for him living to be 100.
Yeah,
I don't know if it has any bearing on his performances, but
and I just want to circle back to a minute to Dark Passage, and I think what's so great about his performance in Dark Passage is the fact that Agnes Moorehead is so histrionic, but it's also like, which is what makes their relationship so perfect, because you see that in real life, where you have a very histrionic person and the other person that is just sort of in this codependent dynamic with them, but who's still very like frustrated. And I think he did that really well, where he was just like kind of losing his mind. Around her, and not like in a flamboyant, but like in the way that you do in that kind of dynamic.
Yep. I don't think actors get enough credit for standing and delivering their lines. And just seeming real. And now I can't wait to see The Menu, because I had no idea that Judith Light was in it. But I always liked her, and I'm so happy to hear that she's still working and that she's in a film, because I know exactly what you mean. It's like that guy in Midnight Diner.
Yeah.
That guy with the blue baseball cap, who is just like, this guy isn't an actor. They just let him on the set somehow to sit there and be who he is. It's like, it feels totally real,
Yeah.
Okay. I cannot remember who's reading this. Is it you or me?
It's me. So This is from Carl. Can you tell me about Charles Laughton? I met him as I was trying out for an extra job in the movie Night of the Hunter, as I was very young first or second grade. I didn't get the part. They said I cried too much. By the way, I think a full rendition of that story might be more interesting than anything we can add to
anything we can say. Yes. So, I mean, seriously, it's like, why are we talking about this? We should just have Carl on the show to talk about his not getting the part in Night of the Hunter. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what is there to say about Charles Laughton? I mean, he's, you know, is Carl really asking, like, what's the deal with Charles Laughton?
I think so.
I don't even know where to begin with this one, because he is, you know, he's such an incredible figure in the history of stage and film acting that I honestly, I'm kind of speechless. I don't know where to begin with this, you know, although I can tell you that Norman Lloyd had great stories about Charles Laughton on stage that I can't do it justice. So it just had to do with his never mind. I'm not even going to start going there because it's too complicated. Maybe in a later episode I'll do it. But do you have a favorite Charles Laughton performance?
Oh gosh, it's really hard to pick. But definitely, oh gosh. Oh gosh.
Okay, that's dead air, Ann. That's dead air. So I'm gonna say in noir, of course, it's Earl Janoff in The Big Clock, where he's just incredible in that. But
what about the period noir though that he did? It's based on a real story. The Suspect.
I mean, fantastic.
You know, because
he is fantastic in that.
Because for me, it's like, that's why it's getting so stuttery. It's like, is it witness for the prosecution or is it the other one? Because witness for the prosecution is great. And just the way, especially I think the way he plays off of Dietrich, you know, is amazing. Like the two of them were so great playing off of each other as being in opposition to each other, their characters were.
And it is so heartbreaking in The Suspect. His love for Ella Raines is incredible. I mean, that might be one of the great, like, clueless older men who have a friendship with a younger woman and mistake it for something else, which is what makes that movie so fantastic. It's a great noir film and a murder story and everything else, but it's the relationship between Laughton and Ella Raines that makes that film so incredible. Yeah. And of course he is just, you know, as a villain, he's incredible in The Big Clock. Yeah. And his performance as the Hunchback of Notre Dame is incredible. You know,
oh God.
And he was also, you know, I have a soft spot for the actress Belita, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
And he became her mentor. When she transitioned from ice skating to acting, and then nobody really took her seriously, he did.
Yeah.
And he,
oh my God.
and she, like, gave up Hollywood to do stage plays with him as the director because she wanted to learn how to really act. And you know, he's just an amazing. And then of course he made Night of the Hunter, which you know, sorry, Carl, that you're not in the film, but you know, is singularly is the greatest one-off movie directing job of all time. Right? Because it's the only movie he made.
Which is a shame because it's brilliant. It's a brilliant film.
Which I love the idea of somebody being so accomplished in their life and having such a full life that they make one movie and it's like, well, that was that. I don't need to do another one. You know, I showed you what I could do and that's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I hope you got something out of this, Carl, because honestly, this is too big a question. Like, what do you think of Charles Laughton? But you know, obviously you can see we have our esteem for this guy, and I I wish more people knew about Charles Laughton
Yeah,
because he's been kind of perhaps lost to time a little bit,
yeah.
which is unfair. It's very unfair.
Because he is one of the greatest actors of all time. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, it will, yeah. So,
And also
yeah,
interesting, just as a little add-on to that observation, it's interesting to me that in a time when we're all supposed to be so aware, and like actors like Charles Laughton and Edward G. Robinson, can they succeed today? I don't know.
I
I
don't
mean,
think so.
Charles Laughton was not anybody's idea of a movie actor or a stage actor or anything, and yet he was so incredibly great that he was undeniable.
Yeah,
But I don't know if you could have an actor like that today.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, he just didn't look like a guy who would be the protagonist in anything,
yeah,
you know. But there he was, and gay on top of it all,
yeah,
you know. So,
yeah,
so I find that fascinating. We're supposed to be so advanced and so evolved today, and yet would Charles Laughton get roles today? I don't
yeah.
know. You know. Anyway, before I get in trouble saying stuff out of school, let's move on.
Okay, this is you, number
Okay.
12.
Francesca in Seattle is reading Errol Flynn's My Wicked, Wicked Ways, which she found at Powell's Books in Portland. We'll throw in a plug for Powell's Books in Portland, one of the great bookstores in the
Yes.
world. Uh, let's not detour into the greatest bookstores. Powell's Books, City Lights in San Francisco, the Strand Bookstore in New York.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm missing some, but well,
Tattered cover in Denver.
yeah. So Francesca says, tell us about the noirs that Flynn was in. Not many, really, if at all. I mean, right? He the only noir I can think of that isn't really noir is Cry Wolf that he did with Stanwyck, which people sometimes call a film noir. But what's
Eh,
your
that was Barbara Stanwyck, girl detective.
yeah yeah. So they kind of no, because Errol Flynn never had his Nightmare Alley.
Yeah.
Because he is in many ways like the equivalent of Tyrone Power.
Yeah.
He was a swashbuckler and a hero, and super handsome guy.
Yeah.
But he never took the bad guy role that Power did with Nightmare Alley.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really Errol Flynn doesn't really have a noir legacy to speak of.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that Francesca would ask that, because it's like, where does this guy fit in noir? And the honest answer is he doesn't. I mean, he
Yeah.
never really went there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest thing that I've ever seen him do, and it's more because of his character, was when he plays a writer who I think is married to Ida Lupino. It's like a period piece, and he's sort of a ne'er-do-well kind of character. It's kind of the darkest character I ever saw him do, and I cannot remember the name of the film.
Well, I'm sure the people watching will fill us
You can
in,
fill
because
that
I
in.
can't remember what it is either. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so this is it. We're down to the end, and I'm telling you, dinner smells really good. So let's do this last one. And these were good questions, and you could tell, Anne, that we've been away for a while, because this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know. It has been. I've enjoyed it too. And a recent topic was, how did this get past the Hayes office? And this is from Aaron, who patiently, and thank you for reminding me that we had not ever actually answered this question. He said, I don't know if this was standard practice, but I was reminded of a story Bob Clampett used to tell. There was a particular cartoon where a dog character is given a hot foot on his tail, and he drags his hindquarters frantically back and forth and across the floor to put out the flames, and then abruptly stops with an aside to the audience. I've already cut this out. I might get to like it. Clampett explained that the directors would screen their films with the censor during the review, and he knew it would be dodgy to get it past the censor, so he deliberately elbowed the censor with some question or verbal distraction at the right moment, so it passed intact. So that's just a great story. And on the topic of Looney Tunes, Eddie, have you ever considered showing at festivals or Noir Alley any of the several cartoons, such as Bacala Arms, Maltese Canary, etc., the feature parodies or characters of Bogart, Bacall, and some of the other Noir era stars?
Um, I certainly have considered doing that. Not as easy as you might think to make that happen. I would love to do it, and I may do it yet. I I don't have any. I mean, I have more control at the Noir City festivals over that kind of thing than I have at TCM. If what I love about doing the, and I love those cartoons. I absolutely love those cartoons. And the thing about getting stuff past the production code, we could do a whole episode just on that because there's so many great stories about it, and there's so many books being written now about certain filmmakers and the code. You know, my friend John Bilheimer wrote a book about Hitchcock and the code,
Yeah.
and like how he just got stuff past the code and his strategy for that. And Dalton Trumbo had a whole thing about how he would write around the code. And everybody has that strategy. And there was always, you know, you've heard numerous stories about scenes being shot knowing that weren't going to get them in the movie, but they'd put them in there to show, to give them something to cut out because they'd forget about the thing they really wanted to get in. Right? Which if that was all you showed them, they'd say that has to go. But if you show them something twice as bad, they'll say that has to go. And you never really meant to put that in the film anyway, right?
Yeah, and that also, like in the Friday the 13th movies, the MPAA got just to the point where as soon as one of their films came up, they were like really picking those films, really picking those films apart. And they would do some of the same things. Like they would know that there was stuff that was going to get trimmed out, but it was just that the MPAA was, just because of those films were so notorious, were really harder on them than probably other slasher films at the same time.
Right. But at TCM, I am always amused by what the programmers come up with to follow my show.
Yeah.
If the show ends early and then there's 10 or 15 minutes, they do such a great job of finding something in the library that applies to the film that's just been shown, and then running that I have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But I love that because everybody has such a good time. You know, I pick everything that's shown on Noir Alley, but I don't pick the follow-up, the shorts and things that follow Noir Alley, but I don't want to because I love seeing what they come up with. But those Looney Tunes cartoons and stuff are very, very well protected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not really easy to get or show. I mean, because that's priceless stuff for Warner Brothers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to be able to show some of those on the big screen at Noir Alley, and I have tried a couple of times and have not met with success, but that was a while ago.
Yeah.
I got a slightly higher profile now.
Maybe you could work it out.
We'll see. That may be good. So that's the last of our questions, but I want to end with a quick note about what is transpiring for those people who might be interested. What is transpiring with the Castro Theater? because I attended the public hearing yesterday at San Francisco City Hall for the Historic Planning Commission. And it was an interesting experience because I've done a fair amount of this in my time at City Hall, and I have never experienced a situation in which every person who spoke was of a like mind. And there were probably 100 people in the chamber, all of whom voiced support for extending landmark status at the theater from the facade to the interior of the building in order to preserve the orchestra seating and keeping the seating as is, right? Because if people who have followed this story know that the owners of the theater have signed an agreement with a concert promoter who wants to remove the seating and put in terraced floors, more amenable to concerts than movie going, and also as a way to allow for bars serving alcohol to actually be in the auditorium itself, not just the lobby, not just the mezzanine, but in the auditorium. There would be, under the plans that were originally submitted, there would be 5 alcohol stations in the building. Now, people know that I have no opposition to alcohol at all, but this is a disastrous route that they're taking. So I spoke out vehemently against it, and as did everyone else who was in the chambers. It was startling at the end of this thing when the question was whether to have a continuance of this to next year or not. And one of the commissioners at this thing said that he was a little dismayed by the apparent discord among the people attending the meeting. And I have never been in a room where there were more people unanimously agreed on something, because not one single person spoke out in favor of changing the seating in the theater. Not one person.
Yeah.
Either in their presence in the chambers or calling in by phone. This was a nearly 3-hour meeting that took place, and there wasn't one voice raised in favor of changing the seating. And this Commissioner Johns, said there's a lot of discord amongst the people who are speaking here today. There wasn't any discord. Everyone was in agreement. If this isn't a noir world, I don't know what is, because
it's definitely San Francisco politics.
It was uncanny. And then another commissioner said, well, we haven't really heard from everyone, so we have to postpone this for another 2 months. And it's like, they had their chance to come here and speak, and not a single person representing the money side of this chose to appear in public to present their case.
Yeah.
So I'm saying all of this because if anybody's listening who happens to be local and in the Bay Area, and that meeting has been postponed to February 1st, which is right after the conclusion of the Noir City Film Festival. And if you don't think I'm going to encourage the audience at the Noir City Film Festival, which is, of course, at the Grand Lake Theater, because I don't want to be at the Castro Theater right now because they are not dealing in good faith. But I'm going to encourage all those people to attend that meeting at City Hall on February 1st to make their voices heard, because it's a travesty, you know. So, you know, that's what I like. San Francisco to not have a single screen movie theater where the arts can be celebrated like this. There was a woman who called in who was great. She was an older woman who said, you know, I've attended the Silent Film Festival and the Noir City Film Festival, and I don't understand why we have to have another venue catering to young people bouncing up and down with drinks in their hands. Which just, I just roared when I heard that, because it was just so, because there are dozens and dozens of those venues, right? But there's only one movie palace left in San Francisco. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll get off my soapbox now, but I just wanted to get that off my chest, because it was very dismaying yesterday at the end of all of that. And there were some beautiful, eloquent speakers who got up and, from the Art Deco Society, Rebecca Solnit gave a very impassioned talk to the commissioners. And the idea that they just kind of go, yeah, well, whatever, we'll see. We'll see how much we're going to get to, rubber stamp this thing. It's noir, baby. It's noir.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've never lived somewhere where the local politics were as corrupt as in San Francisco.
It's my hometown.
I know.
But I will tell you that it has never been worse than it is right now.
Yeah.
Because all these people are in the pockets of developers. It's just, that's it. I mean, it's just and you can feel it walking around the city.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really sad, because this was an artist town at one point.
Yeah.
It was all about the artists, and now it's all about the money. It's just about, because the city is so contained with only 49 square miles.
Yeah.
That the is at a premium, and everybody knows it, and that's it. And it's all about the money.
No.
But maybe we shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Okay. And on that note, Anne, we will conclude this episode. I hope some people have stayed till the end to hear Eddie's impassioned plea. But we'll see where all this ends up. It's not over. It is definitely not over. Because if I was the people at Another Planet Entertainment who are trying to take over the theater, I'd be very concerned at this point, and be having second thoughts about the value of doing this. I mean, anybody with a conscience can see that that there's going to be as much negativity to these plans as anything positive. And if you think you're going to get the kind of loyalty out of kids going to concerts that you get out of the arts community, guess again.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that.
Okay.
And this was great fun.
Yay! So yes, it was good to be back. Like I said, our hiatus was sort of unexpected, but it was okay. We're back, and I just want to remind everybody to go to northcity.com to see what's going to be playing at North City 20 in 2023,
our 20th anniversary.
Our 20th anniversary. And so all that will be up there, including ticket links and all that good stuff. Hopefully, I think when this airs.
Yes, in fact, I think today when I
so I really hope everything's up there.
when I get offline with you, I am going to check my email, and I expect to see that we have finally locked the last 3 films on the program, and that we'll be able to post everything. Everything will go up. Should be up by the time this airs. The entire program should be online and available. And I'm very excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It will be kind of a blowout.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that people coming from out of town, please consider it, because I shouldn't say this, but a lot of people in San Francisco are going to think it's more difficult to get to Oakland than people coming from
Yeah.
Sweden.
I know.
think it's difficult to get to Oakland.
And we
So
have
even
actually a hotel deal. So if you go to northcity.com, we do have a deal going with the Marriott in Oakland. So you can even book a hotel.
yes. And so I would say to people who are thinking about this, it will be great. Buy a passport to guarantee you getting a seat at every show.
Yeah.
Because there's half as many seats as there were at the Castro, right?
Yeah.
There's only 640 seats for this as opposed to 1,400 at the Castro. So, you know, if you want to come, do it.
Yeah. Buy a passport. Come join us. It's going to be a great festival. Plus, it's an anniversary, and that's always exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot. I can tell you already. I know a lot of fun people are showing up, and it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time.
Yep. Okay. And I had a good time. I'm going to go eat my dinner now. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Give your cats a squeeze for me, and we'll see you again very soon.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.